The great indoctrination scheme throughout academia today permeates throughout every course at every level, whether it's sexualizing children in school at the earliest possible age, or by promoting Marxism, or gender fluidity, or white privilege. The goals are the same: to destroy the family structure, which is the great obstacle standing in the way of the socialist utopia, to get students to reject the moral standards of their parents, and any moral standards for that matter, to promote collectivism, obedience, and all forms of social dependency and groupthink in order to eliminate all non-compliant thought with the state.
We have never invested as much in public education as we should have because we've always had kind of a private notion of children. Your kid is yours and totally your responsibility. We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children. So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
Just opening up with the authors' declaration of what this is about. In Our World, Our Future theme, students learn about social values that, according to Zander Blaser, unite us as a country. Social values, social obstacles, group problem solving, and social justice. That's the stated purpose of these books.
The whole purpose for education is to be reorientated. The second paragraph, it says, both formal and non-formal education are indispensable to changing people's attitudes. They will be assessing and trying to change attitudes. That's what I am so concerned about.
It's an informal assessment tool that notes growth and change, not in literature and writing, but in an individual student's behaviors and attitudes. Huh?
Stanley Kurtz is the author of Spreading the Wealth, and he said that Common Core has 3 objectives. He actually wrote a chapter on Common Core. He said it's a politicized curriculum that promotes leftist notions like social justice.
So in 1958, Cleon Skousen, some of you are familiar with this, he wrote 45 goals of the communists. And in that, I was very fascinated to read this, several of these deal with education. Number 17 on his list, the first one here, get control of the schools, soften the curriculum, put the party line in textbooks, emphasize the need to raise children away from the negative influence of parents, attribute prejudices, mental blocks, and retarding of children to suppressive influence of parents.
And here's what the NEA said in 1948. Quote, far too many people in America, both in and out of education, look upon the elementary school as a place to learn reading, writing, and arithmetic. You fools, you actually believe that.
One of the first things they have them do is to learn how to use emotional words. Not fact-based words, not logic, but to persuade using emotion. So teachers are reminded to tell students that when they write a call to action, they should include emotional words to get readers to feel so strongly about the problem that they want to do what is being asked of them. Here's the exercise that the students are supposed to do. Circle the problem in the call to action and put a box around the emotional words. ABC company wants to build new houses in our neighborhood. We need your help! Exclamation point. They want to tear down our park and build houses in its place. The company says they will move the park to another spot, but they refuse to tell us where or when. It could be months or even years. And back here in the teacher's script, it talks about why to use words like refuse. Refuse is a stronger word that makes the ABC company sound as though they are hard to work with, which may make readers angry with them. Again, the purpose is to get the readers upset and angry, and to maybe even bend the truth a little bit. Why did the writer say we could be without a park for months or even years? By stating the worst that could happen if the company builds houses, the writer appeals to the reader's feelings of anger. They are being taught in a very systematic way how to write using emotional words to stir up feelings and emotions in others.
The purpose of education is not to allow your kids become what they can be. It's not to awaken in them a love of learning, to turn gifted young math students into mathematicians or kids who can write well into writers. That was never the intention of this. The common in Common Core means that. Common, collective, communal, interdependent. What are we driving for here? And they're telling you flat out that, and most American parents still believe this, that you go to school to learn things. You go to school to master subject areas. That is not the design.
It's normally E stands for equity, but here they have social because it means social justice, and of course environment and economy. Equity, the whole term for social justice, is really preaching the common good, not individual rights. Our children should not think of themselves as individuals. They should think of themselves as part of the collective. Economy is redistribution of wealth, global trade, public-private partnerships. How the 3 E's are being implemented. Phil Caro, who is the co-lead author of the CC Math Standards, said, the reason we have math standards is for the social justice agenda. He blatantly says that. Math textbooks are teaching politically correct attitudes such as scarcity of resources, global warming, redistribution of wealth.
What is their agenda? It is the destruction of the family. It is tearing down national sovereignty. It is doing whatever they can to separate children from their parents.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents. We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents.
You see what's happening with these public schools they want? They want them to replace the families. The schools will become surrogate parents. They're going to replace you. That's the objective here.
Parents do not own their children. They have no natural right to control their education fully. Most youth still hold the same values of their parents. If we do not alter this pattern, if we don't re-socialize, our system will decay. A standardized curriculum of basic skills such as reading, writing, and arithmetic cannot prepare people to participate in a democracy. Enlightened social engineering is required to face situations that demand global action now. Public education has served as a check on the power of parents. Every child in America entering school at the age of 5 is insane because he comes to school with certain allegiances to our founding fathers, toward our elected officials, toward his parents, toward a belief in a supernatural being, and toward the sovereignty of this nation as a separate entity. It's up to you as teachers to make all these sick children well by creating the international child of the future. World Federation for Mental Health published this. The family is now one of the major obstacles to improved mental health and hence should be weakened.
Think of a school-oriented problem and present it to the class. For example, the school needs balls and jump ropes for students to use at recess. Things that they're entitled to, is what it sounds like. We're going to write a letter. So say to the students, we're going to write a letter to parents about the problem. We want to help them. We want them to help solve the problem. We need parents to understand our problem, so we're going to use words that make them feel how important it is to help us. And the teacher's supposed to write anger, fear, and joy on the chalkboard. First time I read this, I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked. The teacher is supposed to help students stir up their parents to anger, fear, and then joy in order to get them to give them jump ropes and balls. So write the sentence, the children have nothing to do during recess. And say, remember, this sentence is for your parents. How might a parent feel when he or she reads this sentence? And then discuss the feelings students suggest and guide the discussion as needed to the idea that parents may be upset or angry by this sentence, and that's really the goal, is to get parents upset or angry. Where the student's supposed to read each sentence and then choose the emotional word or phrase to complete each one. They're not being taught logic, they're not taught persuasion through facts, they're taught to persuade with emotional words. The little girl does not like or can't stand wearing her boots. Well, of course, the emotional word is can't stand. I skipped down here to this one that caught my eye. My mom always tells me to clean my room, or my mom always nags me to clean my room. And the students are being taught to use the word nags me. My mom always nags me to clean my room. As a parent, it doesn't feel very good to see a publisher try and marginalize the parent-child relationship.
The schools cannot allow parents to influence the kind of values education their children receive in school. That's what's wrong with those who say there's a universal system of values. Our goals are incompatible with theirs. We must change their values. Education for international understanding involves the use of education as a force for conditioning the will of the people. UNESCO Handbook. As we've pointed out, it is frequently the family that infects the child with extreme nationalism. The school should therefore use the means described earlier to combat family attitudes.
We haven't had a very collective notion of these are our children, these are our children, these are our children.
One mother who went incognito to a social studies teachers conference was left completely shocked at what she found. She said, "I left the social studies conference with the understanding that now our children are being taught about social justice, equality, tolerance, becoming community activists for social change, as well as what is and isn't fair according to someone other than the parents. In addition, our children are learning about becoming a global citizen and not an American citizen." She said, "I will likely go all over the place in my attempt to communicate what I witness, understood, and fear from being at this conference." The sessions were broken down by the age groups starting as young as pre-K. I attended a total of 11 sessions ranging from pre-K through high school, plus the keynote speaker, Representative John Lewis from Georgia. Some sessions were blatantly plugging social change issues while others embedded their ideas within the curriculum they offer. The 21st century thinking is all about being a global citizen using skills like engaging, collaborating, problem solving, and empowering. She said, "Much of what I witnessed was meant to grab our children's emotions, like fear and anger, to incite action on their part. There is no basis of truth being taught for our children to pin their thoughts to, just a push towards raw emotions."
Emotional words, emotional words, emotional words. Not fact-based words, not logic, but to persuade using emotion.
So this is reading from the article. The course with the official title, The Truth About Pornography, a Pornography Literacy Curriculum for High School Students Designed to Reduce Sexual and Dating Violence, is a recent addition to Start Strong, a peer leadership program for teenagers headquartered in Boston's South End and funded by the city's public health agency. About 24 selected high school students attend every year, most of them Black or Latino, along with a few Asian students from Boston public high schools, including the city, so on and on. During most of the year, the teenagers learn about healthy relationships, dating violence, and LGBT issues, as opposed to English and history and math.
In 2014, as an offshoot of the Philadelphia Federation of Teachers, an organization called the Working Educators was formed. Now, Working Educators consists of teachers, nurses, school psychologists, support staff, guidance counselors, and librarians. But unfortunately, this group has the goal of designing your children's curriculum, and it is laced with their radical left-wing politics. And they're brazen about it. In fact, a quick visit to their website will demonstrate that they are a brazenly left-wing political organization. They have an advertisement for a left-wing march on their front page right now. They consistently work with the Philly Socialists, a group that, according to them, want to fundamentally change America, which makes sense because they're literally socialists. Their politics are deeply connected to the curriculum of the Philadelphia education system. And in January of 2017, Working Educators organized a training exercise for nearly 100 Philadelphia public school teachers. During this training, teachers were educated about how to teach children about Black Lives Matter. And in fact, they were encouraged to wear Black Lives Matter t-shirts into the classrooms where they were teaching. For the older kids, they infused the racial politics into their science and biology course in particular. However, for the younger kids, they did something a little bit more sinister. They actually gave the younger kids propaganda coloring books that were supposed to give kids a heightened awareness of racial issues and teach them about white privilege and oppression by white people. But there's something so wrong about giving a kid a coloring book, something that's supposed to be an activity for fun, that's propaganda. It feels like it's ripped straight out of the Soviet Union.
A Minnesota school adopts an all-for-all strategic plan, a sweeping initiative that reordered the district's mission from academic excellence to racial equity. Equity in this context does not mean equality or fairness, it means racial identity politics, an ideology that blames minority students' academic challenges on institutional racial bias and focuses on uprooting white privilege. At the high school, the equity agenda is the leading edge of the full-scale ideological re-education campaign. Just take a look at one of the course's description. An 11th grade U.S. literature and composition course which writes, by the end of the year you will have learned how to apply Marxist, feminist, post-colonial, psychoanalytical lenses to literature. The primary vehicle in the indoctrination effort is a year-long English course required of all 10th graders that centers not on reading literature and enhancing writing skills, but on the politicized themes of colonization, immigration, and social constructions of race, class, and gender. When Trump won the election, anarchy and bullying paralyzed the high school. One student said the day after the election, quote, "I felt like the school was descending into mass hysteria." Another said Trump's victory was treated as the end of the world as we know it. Students reported every teacher was crying in class. One even told the class Trump winning is worse than 9/11 and the Columbine shooting. The sheer volume of liberal propaganda that was pushed every single day in class this year was worse than it's ever been, and you're bullied by the teachers and every student if you dare to speak against it. Teachers at the school used totalitarian methods, particularly self-criticism sessions, which was popular among communist regimes, to enforce ideological rigidity and reinforce social cohesion. In a 10th grade AP World History class, the teacher called out Trump supporters and asked them to assure the class that they weren't racist. In this Minnesota school, like many schools across America, radical indoctrination has supplanted actual education that helps students prepare for the real world. Test scores have been plummeting, and in recent years, teachers have been shoving so-called white privilege along with Marxism, feminism, and post-colonialism down the throats of young people. Though a growing number of parents, students, and teachers are angry and frustrated about recent developments, they hesitate to protest publicly. Students and parents fear bullying and retaliation in terms of grades and classroom humiliation. The climate of intimidation is so intense that few parents will actually speak on the record about it.
Now, working educators is just one aspect of this problem. There's another organization in Philadelphia that's even more pervasive in my opinion, and that's called Need and Deed. Need and Deed is active in about 60 public schools in the city of Philadelphia, and they consider themselves pioneers in what they call service learning. Now, I'm gonna give you one chance to guess what you think service learning is. If you guessed left-wing activism, pat yourself on the back because you got it right. Need and Deed has students go out and work with activist organizations for grades. They do presentations that are anti-Second Amendment. They do presentations that are radically pro-environmentalists. But worst of all, in my opinion, there's a Need and Deed project where they send kids a list of heroic women that they have to do a profile on. And the profile is supposed to cover their struggles and their virtues. And you're supposed to do a report on how these heroic women overcame racism, sexism, homophobia, and became upstanding citizens. Now that might sound like a pretty innocuous project on its own, but after going through the list of women, nearly all of them are radical leftists, Marxists, communists, socialists. And to give you an example about the kind of people that the 8th graders in Philadelphia public schools are given as examples to look up to, I decided to pick out one person from their list. And that person is Wagari Mati. And the reason this person stuck out to me amongst all the other leftists is because this woman actually said that white men created AIDS to kill off all African Americans. This is who the children in 60 schools inside the city of Philadelphia are being taught is a hero, somebody to look up to, somebody to emulate. A woman who believes that AIDS was invented by genocidal whites to kill African Americans. Look, I can go through example after example of radical left-wing politics being taught in schools to children.
In other parts of the United States, elementary and secondary schools focus on crusades for so-called social justice. Take a suburban Chicago high school hosting an all-school mandatory seminar day that features far-left speakers on subjects including police genocide against Black Americans and suppression of their voting rights. The school insists there is no evidence of any political or social ideology or agenda. The conference also hosts a We Charge Genocide workshop. The one-sided event mentions privilege in at least 5 different workshops.
And if you look at the board policy at New Trier and you look at sort of who's running this, I'm not even sure it's necessarily legal. I think there's a chance here that it's violating the rights of the parents and the kids. Our goal is to, stop governments from taking away people's rights, right? And so I've actually started to take a hard look at this from a legal perspective and whether or not what New Trier is doing is incorrect legally, because people need to stand up against this type of indoctrination. Like you said, if they have an opinion, they want to do this on a Saturday, they want to self-finance it, God bless. Whoever wants to come can come. Or they need to have balance, one of the two.
We have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents.
Emotional words. Emotional words.
These are our children.